Welcome to Witness from the BBC World Service, where history is told by those who were there. Podcasts from the BBC World Service are supported by advertising.
Hello, and thank you for downloading this Witness History podcast from the BBC with me, Rebecca Kesby. And today we head back to late December 1980 and the mysterious multiple sightings of unexplained lights over the biggest airbase in Western Europe. The Rendlesham Forest incident, as it became known, is considered one of the most significant UFO sightings ever recorded. I've been speaking to the senior military officer who says he saw them. It was Christmas time. The night of the 25th into the 26th of December 1980. And all was quiet in the leafy English county of Suffolk, until strange lights were seen over the huge US airbase at RAF Woodbridge. It was the beginning of 3 consecutive nights of what seemed otherworldly activity.
I'll never forget that night. I mean, it's burned into my mind.
Colonel Charles Holt, at the time the senior commander of the base.
Up until the incident occurred, I never really in my whole life ever gave UFOs much of a thought. As a teenager, I read a book on UFOs and just kind of put it aside, never gave it another thought. When it was reported to me that there was a UFO seen at the base, I was very skeptical and I had a lot of doubts. I was sure there was a logical explanation.
The first Colonel Holt knew of the sightings was on the morning of the 26th at the routine briefing in the military police office.
When I walked into the police office, the on-duty desk sergeant started to laugh, and I knew him. He had a good sense of humor. And I said, "What's so funny? It's, 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning." And he said, "Colonel, you're not going to believe this, but Burroughs, Peniston, and Cabansag were out in the forest last night chasing UFOs all night." I kind of chuckled and thought he was teasing me.
What the 3 men claimed to have seen sounded incredible. Even unbelievable.
He described seeing a metallic-looking object at a distance that had multicolored lights, and it was on the forest floor. 3 of our policemen went into the forest, and they confronted apparently a strange craft, metallic in appearance, about 8 or 9 feet on a side, standing on 3 legs. They walked around, they touched it. They had some type of an experience. Whatever they encountered had some kind of an effect on them. We do know there was about 40 minutes when we couldn't account for them. We lost radio contact. They were getting ready to send a rescue party, so to speak, out when they came stumbling back to the base, telling a wild tale.
Originally, what were you thinking? Were you worried that there was some sort of trespassing going on, that perhaps there was spy activity? What were your concerns?
Well, my first thoughts were that they were mistaken, that they misunderstood something, maybe ball lightning or who knows what. And we discussed it briefly, but nobody seemed to pay too much attention to it. And I kind of just put it aside.
The next night, another very strange event took place.
The on-duty senior police officer, was a female, by the way, went out into the forest seeing lights again. She had some type of an experience, had a nervous breakdown, and was medevac to the States.
What do you mean? She was upset by what she'd seen?
She went into shock and had some serious medical issues. I felt very badly about that. I liked her. She was very personable, bright young lady, and was obviously talented. And I was very disappointed when I heard she had a nervous breakdown. But I've tried to contact her through the years, but she doesn't want to talk to anybody.
On the 3rd night, Colonel Holt was attending the officers' Christmas party on the base when news came that would change his own perspective forever.
We were having our annual dinner when the police lieutenant who was on duty came in, white as a sheet. Now, he was not an excitable person, and he said, "I've got to talk to you and the base commander now." And he said, "The UFO is back."
The base commander asked his deputy, Colonel Holt, to investigate these strange reports to get to the bottom of what was causing them. It's the height of the Cold War, isn't it? So anything suspicious around one of these bases, I suppose your immediate thought would be enemy activity.
I wasn't expecting to see anything, to be very honest with you, but that didn't turn out to be the case.
Colonel Holt assembled a small team of trusted officers. Armed with Geiger counters, flashlights and a healthy dose of scepticism, they ventured out into the forest. Colonel Holt took one other piece of equipment, which many say is solid proof of UFO activity.
I always carried a pocket recorder with me all the time because I didn't like to take notes and things when I was out on the base or doing things.
That tape survives to this day.
Back at the same first corner where we came in. Let's go right back here.
So we went out into the forest, and then it started.
And what did you see?
4 or 5 of us went into the forest, and they showed me where this object supposedly landed the first night. And we found 3 indentations about 7 or 8 feet apart in a perfect triangle. We took radiation readings, and they turned out to be 8 to 10 times higher than normal background radiation. We took the radiation readings off the trees in the forest. These were tall Corsica pines. The side of the tree toward the landing site had much higher readings than the backside.
Pine forests do tend to have quite a bit of natural radiation, I think. But you're saying that one side of the trunk had more radiation than the other side?
Definitely, and the indentations in the ground were much higher, and the center of the triangle formed by the 3 was even higher.
Up to 4. That's the strongest point on the tree? Yes, sir. If you come to the back, there's no clicks whatsoever. No clicks at all on the back. Interesting. 3 trees in the area, immediately adjacent to the site, within 10 feet of the suspected landing site. We're picking up heat reflection off the trees. Hey, this is eerie. This is strange.
What happened next left Colonel Holt barely able to believe his own eyes as the men looked over a nearby field towards an old farmhouse.
There was a glowing red object. The best way I can describe it is about the size of a big basketball or a beach ball, and it had a dark center. And it appeared to be shedding something or dripping like molten metal or sparks coming off it. And the center of it sort of winked like an eye.
There's no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead. It's yellow. I saw a yellow tinge in it, too. Weird.
I kept trying to rationalize, what is this? What was coming off it was almost like when you pour steel out of a crucible in the steel mill. We watched for several minutes, and it actually came into the forest near where we were. It was within 100 yards, maybe less. And we could see it very clearly. It moved horizontally through the trees, bobbing up and down and avoiding the trees, obviously under some type of intelligent control.
It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. There's something very, very strange.
And I said to the 4 with me, let's try and get close to it. And we tried to approach it, and it went back out into the field. And suddenly it silently exploded into 5 white objects, just like fireworks. Just poof. No noise at all, just exploded. It was gone.
When you saw this then, what explanation did you have?
The first thing I thought was, I wish I hadn't come out here because nobody's going to believe this. This is just too bizarre. Really. My mind is working. I'm thinking, some type of reflection off something, air inversion problem, a meteor, ball lightning. This is all going through my mind, but nothing fits. While we were out in the field looking for evidence from whatever was sparking or dripping off the object, one of the party said, look there to the north in the sky. There were multiple objects with multicolored lights on them, moving in synchronization together. In the meantime, we noticed 2 bright white objects in the sky at about 3,000 feet elevation to the south. One of the objects comes overhead very rapidly, stops, and sends down the equivalent of a laser beam at our feet, about 10 or 12 inches in diameter.
How close to this beam were you?
We were within 10 feet probably. And what I'm thinking is this a weapon? Is this communication? Is this a warning? What is it? And as suddenly as it appeared, as though it just clicked, it went off, it was gone.
Weren't you terrified?
We were definitely terrified. That was really put me into shock.
Other military personnel around the base reported seeing similar lights and objects. One group claimed a light from a strange craft shone into the heavily guarded weapons storage area, but the radar operators at the time said they didn't see anything. Since they retired, though, both radar operators have told Colonel Holt that in fact they did witness strange activity. They claim they were warned by their superiors to deny seeing anything, and their records from those nights went missing. Colonel Holt told me what they now say they saw.
They watched the glowing object go across their radar scope in seconds, in other words, 2,000 to 3,000 miles an hour, and it went like a straight line zip across the radar screen. Nothing, even in our inventory today, even some of the experimental jets can't go at the speed this thing moved at.
And if there was a human on board, something that was moving that fast, what might the effect be?
Oh, no human could have survived the conditions that this thing moved.
Are there any other explanations as to what this thing could have been? Could it have been some sort of Ministry of Defence development drone? Could it have been a hoax, something atmospheric like bog gas or something like that?
There's nothing we have even today that could do the things we saw, go through the forest as a glowing object, break into multiple objects, move at the speed. It's baffling. And in addition to the 4 people with me that saw it and the police on scene, the police in the weapons storage saw it. There were civilians who came forward later and saw it. There's probably 40 or 50, maybe more witnesses to have seen the thing.
And most of those people are trained military observers?
Almost all of them were military except the half-dozen British people that saw it, and some of them were pretty competent people.
After the event and a troubled night's sleep, Colonel Holt reported his findings to senior colleagues. He submitted his tape and a short written statement of what had occurred. But no one seemed to want further details.
Having something experienced like this is not what you would call career enhancing. I was really concerned for my career. I was just happy after the incident that it got quiet and it sort of died down. I didn't want the notoriety.
Were you discredited at all professionally after this?
Actually not, because everybody above me, I think, knew something happened, but they didn't want their name associated with it, because there's a stigma that goes with it, and they don't want to be identified with it.
As a respected senior officer, Colonel Holt's version of events wasn't formally questioned or even investigated by the British Ministry of Defence or the Pentagon. His subordinates, however, were pressured to keep quiet about what they'd seen.
3 of the young men that were involved the first night were taken in and debriefed with drugs and hypnosis. They've never been the same. Probably a combination of the confrontation in the forest and the debriefing. They've never been promoted very far. They've always had issues. They've just never been the same. But they were always young enlisted troops, and, they were told to sit down and shut up.
And you, being one of the most senior people ever to have seen one of these things, do you feel responsible in that way?
I do. I feel responsible for telling the truth. Somebody needs to stand up for some of those people and say, hey, what you saw and what happened could have happened. Because I think the public has a right to know what's going on, and it needs to be properly investigated, which it is not. The powers to be, if you will, don't think the public is ready for what I would call disclosure.
Yeah, so lots of people then think, well, to believe this, you've also got to believe there's a huge conspiracy to cover it up, and people don't want to believe that. Well,
I can tell you there's definitely a conspiracy. We are definitely not alone. There is something here.
Are you convinced that it was a UFO?
Oh, there's no doubt it was something beyond anything we know or understand. There's no doubt about it whatsoever.
So in defensive terms, how worrying is this to someone like you?
Well, I have concerns, but I don't think we can do anything about it. I think this is beyond us, so quit worrying about it.
So if they wanted to invade, there's nothing we could do?
They may already have. We don't know it.
What do you mean by that?
There may be a presence here already. Who knows?
Colonel Charles Holt went on to have a distinguished career in the US military and in retirement has written a book about the Rendlesham Forest incident entitled The Holt Perspective. He was speaking to me, Rebecca Kesby, for Witness.
Hi, Hi, I'm Marit Higraf, and it's been a really exciting 12 months for me because my podcast, Death in Ice Valley, has been a massive success around the world. But now it's the end of the year and I'm feeling a little bit poetic. The year's nearly over with its hopes and its fears.
What's your response to the charges against you?
Honestly, I laugh at it.
A year full of stories and treats for your ears.
One day I was a college student worrying about my class assignments. The next I had all the entire country's press outside my college.
But before it's all over, we've written a list of some brilliant things we hope you haven't missed.
And I wonder what on earth happened that day. I don't think I will forget it. Not before I get answer.
The Assassination, My Indian Life and Death in Ice Valley. Catch up now and there'll be lots of new podcasts from the BBC World Service in 2019.